Welcome into another episode of Note News. Today, we're going to talk about why we're buying or selling our stock on Blues players, prospects, coaches, and other people. We'll also talk about the Blues' first preseason game against the Dallas Stars and the final game of the prospect showcase against the Minnesota Wild. All that and more on this episode of Note News. All right, we're getting into it. We're really in the home stretch here. We're seeing hockey games again. Super exciting. So the season starts. It's like 2 weeks away now, just about, like a little more, but we're getting there, man. So if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate it if you would like this video, subscribe to Note News, rate the podcast wherever you listen, and then you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. We try to do at least one episode a week, sometimes two. So if you're really enjoying this, then the best way to follow along is to do one of those things. So really appreciate that. Alec, how you doing? How you feeling that hockey is being played now? How's your day going?
It's like an injection of life into my spirit that I knew I was missing it, and I knew, it hurt to not have hockey, but like seeing it back on the ice full speed for the first time, even if it is just preseason, there's no replacement. And I mean, yeah, I understand that, people find it fun, but in my opinion, why do drugs when hockey exists? Like, I get all of the serotonin that I need watching Central European men throw each other around on skates. And
this is something that you've asked me before. I think it was during the playoffs, but
the playoffs especially, like, there's no excuse there.
Yeah. No, yeah, we're seeing it getting played. It's exciting. Yeah, that's awesome. So today we're going to be buying or selling our stock on players and talking about that and talking about why. So what does that mean? So just a little background, sort of what the purpose of this exercise is. We're just sort of giving our opinions on how we feel about these players, these prospects, coaches, or I guess coach and front office member. But like, what do we think is the realistic outcome for them this upcoming season? Will they have a good season, a bad season? Will they take a step forward or backward based on their performance last season? Just sort of, are we buying or are we selling our stock on these players? And we're going to start with the NHL players. And why not start right at the top with Tomer? Alec, you want to tell me whether or not you are buying or selling your stock on Robert Thomas? He had a breakout year last year, led the team with 86 points, 60 assists, 26 goals, played all 82 games, really just like emerged as a top line center in the NHL and had a fantastic season. Are you buying your stock on him? Do you think he can outperform? Are you gonna? We'll also allow a few holds. We'll try not to hold our stock too much. We'll try to decide one way or another. But what are your thoughts on Robert Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to buy, and I'm going to try and have a little bit more of a take than he's really good. So I think he'll be really good. I actually think last year was such an exceptional year for him because of his consistency and his just like clear and obvious ability, being the best player on the team every game, on a team that really struggled. And, the fact that he could still get, over a point per game average and, finishes one of the top centers in the league for a team that was really offensively challenged. I mean, there were probably in total maybe 2 or 3 good months at most where you could really say the Blues had a consistent offensive output. Because starting off the year, they were really struggling. And then down the stretch against some of those bad teams that we all remember, also they were struggling to score goals. So the fact that Thomas could still get output in that situation is really exciting for this year, that now he's going to be playing with a much, much better surrounding cast. So I think there is nowhere to go but up for Robert Thomas.
Yeah, I think I'll agree. I will also buy my stock on Robert Thomas. I think it's sort of like a maybe a situation of like how much more like juice can we squeeze out of this orange kind of thing. Like I'm not buying on him like breaking out even further and like becoming like an elite goal scorer or something like that. But I am buying on him to make some improvements for sure. I think also if you factor in, this is a discussion that we'll get to later today, but if you factor in maybe like Jordan Cairo taking at least somewhat of a step forward, or Jake Neighbors continuing to progress, like surround him with players that are with other players that are getting better alongside him. I think that he could really have a great season. So I will also buy on Robert Thomas. Um, we've got a lot of guys to get through, so we're not going to dwell too long here, but let's just move it right along. I just mentioned him, Jordan Cairo. I think he's someone that I've sort of been a little bit like a little bit high on as we've talked about him um, this off season. I think he gets a bad rap, and I think that he showed some really positive signs of progressing last season, like especially defensively, took some steps forward. And didn't have a bad season. I think the reason people get frustrated with him is because they've expected so long for him to explode one of these seasons and like become like a 50 goal scorer or something like that. I'm not sure that he'll get that done, but I did make a bold prediction saying that he would score 40 goals. So I think based on that, I will be buying my stock on Cairo as well. So what are your thoughts there on Jordan Cairo?
I think it's tough with Kyrie because I feel like we've seen just such a consistent, steady progression of him. I don't really know. I think I'll say that I'm buying his stock as well. I don't
Hmm.
really know that I would, be putting that much into it though. And I'm not going to use a hold here because I do think he has a chance to play better, sort of for the same reasons that I said about Thomas,
Hmm.
and just a better, scheme that might fit his play style a little bit better. And winning is contagious. So I'm excited
Yeah.
about Kyrie for this year. But I think when I say I'm buying his stock, it's like only a couple chips on the table, or I
Mhm.
expect a slight uptick at most for Kyrie's game, which I think is still worth what he's being paid if he's going to score north of 30 goals and get to almost 80 points. Yeah, I'll definitely take that, especially in the players market now, how it's looking. That looks like about what he's worth. So
Yeah.
it just feels nice to be where we are with Cairo as a team and as a fan base now. So I'll take a small buy-in of Cairo stock.
Yeah, like looking at his past three seasons, like just going by point total, 21, 22, 75 points, 22, 23, 73 points, last season, 67 points. It seems like he's sort of hit this plateau for the past three seasons. And if he stays on that plateau, that's still a productive player, like you were saying. But I think there's a little bit more there. So that's why I'm buying. Let me hear your thoughts then on sort of the star of the Blues team last season, other than obviously Robert Thomas, but Jordan Binnington is like maybe the main reason that the Blues were even in contention for a wild card spot at the end of the season last year. Um, really solid season. Um, I will give my thoughts on him in a second, but are you buying on Jordan Binnington? Can he repeat on that amazing season? Can he improve, or is he going to take a step back?
I it's so hard to predict goalie performance as we've said, and so it is almost never the right play to go all in expecting a goalie to be great. That being said, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking my own advice, and I'm super buying in on Jordan Binnington this season. I
Okay.
I think he I think he will be as good as he was last year. I think there's a chance that he gets better. Um, I think he first of all, he looked really good in the game against the Stars last night.
Hmm.
Um, and he has a chance, yeah, to just I recently wrote my thoughts on what I said in our bold predictions episode about the defense improving. So
Hmm.
you can check it out in Bleeding Blue. I went to a more comprehensive deep dive, I think, on that take. And if that holds, which I'm still kind of holding true that I believe it's going to be better, then yeah, a goalie of Binnington's caliber that's only gotten better every year he's played for the most part and is sort of entering the prime of his goaltending career. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm buying on Binnington, and I'm kind of going. This is the one where I'm really going all in on. I
Mm.
think he could have a really, really get the deserve from the NHL that perhaps NHL fans will never give him. But I think this is his year to say the puck don't lie.
Puck don't lie. Um, I swear that we're really going to try not to buy on all these players, both of us. We are Blues fans, so keep that in mind. I'm also going to be buying on Jordan Binnington. He was my Vesna pick. I really think he is entering his prime. Obviously, that 2019 run was insane, was magical. But I think like now is when we're going to be, the next few seasons is going to be prime Jordan Binnington. So I'm also buying. I'm expecting great things from him this season, and I agree. I think the defense will be not as bad as it was last year, which will only help. So I too will be buying on Jordan Binnington. Um, Next, we'll talk about this is kind of an interesting one because the Blues gave him a contract extension this offseason. Pavel Buchnevich, he was one of the better players for the Blues last season. Third in points was with 63. He had 27 goals, which is tied for second on the team, and 36 assists. So pretty solid season. He got the extension. So he will, stay in St. Louis through the 2030-31 season, which is kind of crazy to think about, but he'll be around a while. Um, I think that I will sort of do like a soft sell on Buchnevich. I think that, and I don't think that selling the stock. When I say that I'm selling, I'm not selling for the long term. I'm just selling for this upcoming season. I don't think he will have quite as good a season as he did last year. I think it'll still be productive and all that. But he, a couple, in 21-22 had that really good 76-point season. And the past two seasons has sort of been taking steps down. I think he might take another step down, not a big one, but, he's still, this will be like his age 29 season. So there's still a lot left in the tank for sure. But I'm just going to do like a soft sell for this season. And then I think, we'll see how this season goes. But I think next offseason I might be buying again. But what do you think on Booch?
I am, and as you said, there's going to be some sales coming up. We promise. I am going to be buying on Buchnevich though for this season. I'm actually pretty excited about his production.
Mhm.
On that 22-23 season where he had 67 goals, that was in 63 games, so over point per game, which is he's a good player. He's always been a good player.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm excited for him this year is because I think this is really going to be his chance to take a step up on the power play.
Mm.
It feels like we have a lot more of an identity now with guys like Jake Neighbors emerging who can play physical down low, win puck battles. That's what we've really needed. That's something that Jordan Cairo hasn't always offered.
Mhm.
And I really like the because of that, I like how Buchnevich fits in as kind of being part physical and also part sniper. It's just a really big threat on special teams as and also as I mentioned on the defense with the Bennington point. Buchnevich is just such a defensively sound forward that I like his ability to steal pucks, create rush chances, and put up production that way too. Which now, with guys like Dylan Holloway that we have, and Jake Neighbors, obviously, we have this new speed element that the Blues could potentially take advantage of as well. So
Hmm.
I like Buchnevich for this season. I'm not sure that it's going to be a massive step up, but I think it's going to be like right in line with Buchnevich's career average and could even be the best season in a Blues uniform that he has.
Interesting. Yeah, I like Booch and I like the contract extension. I think that was a good move. Um, Maybe a little bit longer than I would have liked, but overall was happy with it. And I think the contract as a whole will be a success. I don't know. I got to sell on someone. I can't buy on
Yeah.
all these guys. But you mentioned him there, sort of at the end there. Your guy, Jake Neighbors. I'll let you give your thoughts on him. Are you buying or selling on? You're the number one fanboy for Jake Neighbors. Like a lot of pressure here. Are you gonna buy?
Yeah, I mean, as if I am appointing myself president of the Jake Neighbors fan club, which I'm not sure is true. I think people are really excited about him as much as I am. I actually think Jake Neighbors is someone I might sell on. And that is partially because I think you explained it well pre-show that the concept of like buying or selling stock is that Jake Neighbors stock right now is really high. And
Yeah.
I just don't know that in this coming season he's going to be that player that I think we all think, myself included, that he can be.
Hmm.
So I actually am going to be selling a little bit on Jake Neighbors. Last year, obviously, exploded onto the scene with 27 goals. I'd still like to see him get north of 20, and I think he can, but I think
Hmm.
there's a chance that he doesn't quite hit that mark. And also, the other part of his game that really needs some work is defensively. He is really quite poor. So
Hmm.
you'd like to see him develop a little bit more of an NHL profile. Also, just in sports, I believe in the sophomore slump. And I
Yeah.
think there's a chance that Neighbors, he, excuse me, created a lot off of, and shot a lot. We'll definitely see his time on ice go up. Last season it was 1542, which is not that high, but he wasn't really playing that much until the end of the season anyway.
Hmm.
So he's definitely going to get more of a responsibility. But I think there's some stuff on the margins that could hurt him, and mostly it's just, again, I'm not saying that Jake Neighbors is going to be bad next season. I don't think he's going to be bad next season. I just don't know. He certainly has a chance to be a top 3 or 4 scorer on this team, but I'm not
Hmm.
sure that I'm like penning him in to do so.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think I'm also going to do like again a soft sell, just because his season was so good last year. Like you were saying, I don't think I'm not super confident that he can repeat it. I think he will have a good season, a productive season, and I think he'll be like a really solid player for them. But like when I think of the concept of buying or selling stock, like you said, his stock is super high right now, and I think I got to sell because I think he'll take a small step back, which maybe a small step back is still like a really good player, like you said, but a soft sell is what I'll say. Let's talk next about this will be our first defenseman. Let's talk about Colton Parayko. He led defenseman on the Blues in goals scored last season with 10, but only had 16 assists, I believe, to go along with that. So he was really solid. I feel like defensively one of the bright spots for the Blues last season defensively is he has been many times, but um, I think that this is a tough one. I
Mm-hmm.
think that I think I'm gonna buy. I'm gonna buy on Colton Parayko because he's someone that I think could really you know lead defenseman again in goals scored, lead defenseman on both sides of the puck. He's like a brick wall out there, like we talked about it so many times. He led the league in blocked shots, also led defenseman in goals, like I just mentioned. So I feel like he can be a real leader for from the blue line for the Blues, offensively and defensively. And I think he has another really solid season. I think he can take some steps forward with like the improvements around the roster, in terms of like goals scored and then in terms of assists as well. And that slap shot is scary. So I will be buying on Pareko. What do you think?
Hmm. I am kind of going back and forth. I actually think I am going to use one of my like holds on Colton
Okay.
Parayko.
Okay.
Um, I think it's really hard to profile how he's going to fit in on this team because I just don't know that he's played with like this style of team of pretty fast, very aggressive in the neutral zone and in transition.
Hmm.
I feel like I have no doubts in my mind that he's. I mean, okay, I'm holding on him, so I'm not. It's not like I'm selling on him. Also, he's just always been the sort of pillar of consistency for this team, always and forever.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, maybe as a case to go into the Blues Hall of Fame. We'll see how his career ends up. But anyways, yeah, I think I like how Pareko fits into this team because I like how he always fits into the Blues team. But I'm curious to see how he takes this role, and I'm not really sure that I can make a firm decision either way.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. Um, let's do. Um, let's move now to the Blues captain, Braden Shen. I think actually, let me get your thoughts on. We're kind of taking turns here. Let me get your thoughts first on Braden Shen. Are you buying or selling?
This is a tough one. Um, and I think it depends on his usage.
Hmm.
So I am going to say in how I expect by the end of the season he'll end up being used, I might actually be buying on Braden Shen.
Okay.
And hear me out here. This is going back to the Jake Neighbors point earlier. Braden Shen stock right now is like is super low. I don't think. I mean, his play on the ice last year is just it. Frankly, was not good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are expecting that, and I see it, and I understand. I think Braden Shen to me feels like if they use him in the right role, which would be as like a 3 or honestly 4C, or as like
Mm-hmm.
a probably bottom 6, maybe middle 6, but probably bottom I don't know. Somewhere in the bottom 9 as a winger, I think he actually could find some success there. And I think especially as a winger, his defensive numbers won't look so bad because the responsibilities aren't as much. And Braden
Mm-hmm.
Shen is smart defensively. It's just he isn't really fast or athletic anymore, so it's hard for him to hold up with the responsibilities of being a center.
Mm-hmm.
But he still is just a very smart player that if he finds himself in the right role as a role player and not a key cog, sort of supporting the backbone or the spine of this team, then I actually kind of like how he could fit in. I'm not saying, he's going to go back to being one of the best players on the team, but I think he could be
Yeah.
a really nice role player. And because Braden Shen's stock is so low, I think I'm slightly buying. But if they do ask him to do what he did last year and be a 2C or a 3C with a lot of minutes, play a lot of special teams, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna continue selling Braden Shen stock.
Yeah. That's fair. I think I'd agree that his stock is pretty low, and if you're projecting any kind of marginal improvement, it's fair to buy. I'm not sure that I am. I think I am going to sell my stock on Braden Shen. I think he's had a pretty inconsistent 2020s. I feel like the
Yeah, that's
past
fair.
4 or 5 seasons, like he's had good seasons in there, but it just hasn't been consistent, and it doesn't seem like he's the kind of player you can count on to have a good season. Not like I'm not saying that he's always having a bad season or anything like that. Like just last year he had a pretty solid season with 65 points. And he's not a bad player, but I agree if he's used right, he can be like a productive player in the lineup. But I'm just not sure I can count on him to take a step forward. And so I think for that reason, I'm going to have to sell on Braden Shen. Sort of a similar ish, maybe kind of. I don't know. I don't know what you think on this one, but let's talk about Brandon Saad next. So he's one that honestly, I think we talked about this a little. I might have to hold on Brandon Saad. I think I'll use one of my holds here. Last season, was one of the bright spots offensively with 26 goals and had 42 points. So not a bad season offensively by any means. He's someone that we've mentioned as well as if he has a good season this coming season and the Blues don't do they trade him? Is he a trade piece, that kind of thing? So I don't know. It's sort of a tricky one. And let me pull up um, his season by season stats here. Um, he is sort of the past three, like his tenure in St. Louis has been pretty solid. It feels like point totals um, in the 40s and upper 30s. So maybe I think he could continue that, but I'm not sure that he can like repeat with like the goals scored piece, because 26 is like the most he's scored in a little while. So um, yeah, I don't really know what to make of Brandon Saad for next season. So yeah, that's why I'm gonna hold. But curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, Saad is a tough one, because it does feel like he could sort of repeat last year, be a solid scorer, and it feels like he could be due for a step back. I think I'm going to land on the side of, oh man, every time I make a point in my head, I like undo it and counter myself. It's so difficult. I think of all the forwards that I like going into this year, I think, yeah, okay. I really thought I was going to sell on Saad, but I think of all the like depth forwards going into this year, Saad is probably like second or third on my list. And for that reason, I kind of have to buy on Brandon Saad stock. I actually
Hmm.
think I agree that his points could actually take a step back,
Hmm.
or specifically his goals could maybe take a step back. But I
Right.
still think he's going to offensively contribute and um, fit in nicely with this team. And I trust him more than I do, like, if just being honest, I do like a Dylan Holloway or a Radek Fax or a Matthew Joseph or, whoever.
Hmm.
His upside might not be the highest of a lot of those guys, but I think his floor seems like it should be higher. And for that reason, I think he's going to fit in nicely on the team. Probably won't play a ton of special teams minutes.
Hmm.
Um, but I still like his experience and his ability to work off of some of these more explosive playmakers.
For sure. Yeah, that I feel like that's one of the trickier ones for sure. Let's talk about Justin Falk next. So this will be sort of like um, not the last guy we'll talk about, but like we'll shift to talk about some of the offseason acquisitions next. But Justin Falk, I'm curious to hear. This is an interesting one. Are you buying or selling on Justin Falk?
This is an interesting one because I'm not really sure where his like stock is at. Like I think
Yeah.
he's kind of fallen out of favor with Blues fans, but his production has actually like been fine.
Hmm.
Um I think I don't know. I think Falk is just going to be Falk. I guess I don't know that I expect him to take a step up.
Hmm.
I don't know if you call that selling or holding, because again, I just don't know where his stock is right now.
Yeah.
But I kind of expect him to be where he's been for the past couple years in his career. I think he'll be okay. I think he'll um, be probably one of the two defensive leaders in like production, offensive production.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, I probably think he's going to be number one.
Sounds
But
like
I
you're
don't.
buying.
Yeah, yeah. See, I don't really know like what the answer is, but
Yeah.
I think he's going to be fine. I guess too, playing with Broberg, we'll see how they play
Right.
off each other because Broberg feels very. Well, we'll get into Broberg later.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I don't really know what the answer to that is, but I think I guess it's a hold.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Holding
What do you
holding on
think?
Justin Falk. I think I want to buy. I mean I'd agree that his stock is low, but he's not that far removed from having some really solid seasons. Like in 2021, 22, had 47 points, finished 15th in Norris Trophy voting. Followed it up in 2022, 23 with a 50-point season. That you know I don't, and then last season was 30 points and definitely a step back, but he only played 60 games last season, so it's an interesting discussion. But I think his stock is low because of last season. But like I said, not that far removed from some really solid seasons. And I think he's someone that I've talked about. I sort of expect to be one of the main guys to lead defensemen offensively, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And so for that reason, I think I'm going to have to buy on Justin Falk. I think also with the injection of competition, like in the defenseman group, with names like like Philip Broberg, Scott Perunovich, P.O. Joseph, and then some of the young guys that like Matthew Kessel and Tyler Tucker that ideally would make a run for one of those spots. I think that could end up motivating Falk and sort of driving him a little bit. So I think for that reason, I'm going to be buying on Justin Falk. And then sort of you mentioned him there a little bit, Philip Broberg. Let's talk about him next as we move to talk about as we shift to some of the offseason additions. Philip Broberg is one of the big names that the Blues brought in with their gutsy offer sheets move. Philip Broberg is someone based on I would be inclined to say that it's a tougher decision, but I feel like in recent episodes I've been really high on him, so I think I'm going to be buying on him. Sort of not like somewhat of an underwhelming tenure with the Oilers. Not like an outstanding player by any means, but I think he's someone that could potentially play up to the contract that he was given by the Blues. Obviously, as we've mentioned, it was an overpay, but I think in the next couple seasons he can prove that he's worth it. He's someone that I've sort of mentioned I could see cracking the top pair by the end of the season. So I would say that I don't know, but like based on some of the things that I've said in the past, I think that means I'm pretty confident in that I'm going to be buying on Philip Broberg.
Mm-hmm. I think I am going to sell on Broberg.
Okay.
I think his stock feels pretty high. Like it seems like people are pretty excited for Broberg, and I am
Yeah.
too. And I actually think he could have a really good tenure with the Blues. I kind of imagine that he's going to get another contract with the Blues.
Okay.
And I think he's going to be really good down the line. I just don't know if it's going to be this season. This is going to be his age 23 season, so he's still very young, and defensemen kind of take a while to figure it out. I think he could have some flashes and really good individual games, but I think as a whole, his body of work still might, especially because too, I'm so hesitant to call someone a good player because they had a good playoff run, because
Yeah.
it's just such a small sample size, even if it is the most intense level of competition that exists. So I think for that reason, it's not that I think Broberg is going to be bad. I think he'll deservingly be a top 4 defenseman. Um, and I think he could set himself up really well in the future. But I still think there's some things in his game that he needs to work through, and I just don't know that I see it happening all this season.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, even though he had almost no production last season, at least at the NHL level, you're still selling. All right. All right. Fair. Do you want to talk about his sort of counterpart in the offer sheets move next? Let's talk about Dylan Holloway. So you're selling on Philip Broberg, someone in sort of a really similar situation as Dylan Holloway, who I wouldn't say had an outstanding tenure with the Oilers either, but he did have a pretty solid playoff run for them this season, this postseason, I guess. What are you buying or selling on Dylan Holloway?
I'm really excited to see him play. I think he's going to be one of the players I'm very much looking to. I'll be focusing on more than the others.
Mm-hmm.
I still probably think I'm selling on it, and this one is only because of expectations and where he's at as a player and where fans think he could end up. Again, I just think they still have a little bit to go, and I think there's going to be some really exciting flashes. And I think actually, he could have an overall solid season,
Mm.
but I think the idea that he'll end up cementing himself as the top 6 forward is not a given. I think he's almost fighting for playing time in the middle 6. I don't even know that that's a given that he's going to stay there all season. So I
Mm.
think it's going to be a solid season for Holloway, and I'm excited. I'm super excited to watch him play, but I think relative to where expectations are, I'm slightly selling on this idea that he's going to be one of the Blues' best players next season.
Interesting. I'm gonna buy on Dylan Holloway just because, like, I feel like I'm buying based on the premise that I expect him to have a better season than he did last year. Back to back 9-point seasons in 23-24, and then the year prior in 22-23. I think with a team where he's going to get a lot more playing time, he will outperform those numbers. And so I think for that reason, I'm going to buy. I guess stock is kind of high on these two players, like you mentioned, especially among Blues fans. But I'm still going to buy because I think he will take steps forward. Let's talk next about, why don't we do Matthew Joseph? He's someone that the Blues traded for from Ottawa, right? And so this was sort of earlier in the offseason and maybe got buried, I guess, with this offer sheets move especially. But he's someone that I like. I like that they brought him in. I think he's like just a really solid player. Got he's got really good defensive numbers as well, like you broke down in the Meet the Newest Blues mini series that you did, which you should go check that out if you haven't already. Alex sort of introduced all of the newest Blues acquired this offseason. So those are it's like a little quick mini series, 10 minutes an episode, that kind of thing. So check those out for sure. He's someone that I really like for the Blues. I really like what he brings, as I mentioned, defensively especially. And so I think he's someone that I'm going to buy on, taking, I mean, maybe not a step forward because he's kind of like a decently established player, but I think he's someone that on the Blues will be really productive. And so I think I'm going to buy on him.
Yeah, I think for the same reason, I'm also going to buy on Matthew Joseph. I agree. He kind of got lost in the shuffle of the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really like how he profiles this season compared to how he was playing in Ottawa. I think he's just a really underrated role player that like is going to fill a void that, maybe we didn't realize we had of just an overall very solid, very responsible bottom six player that I think could really, I don't know, be almost exciting to watch for a depth forward. I think he's got the tools to be okay offensively, and I like his defensive game. He was playing on Ottawa around 16 minutes a game. The 2 seasons ago now, he only played 56 games and got 14 minutes of average ice time. But
Mm-hmm.
the other 2 seasons he was with Ottawa, it was north of 16 minutes. So I think probably there's some usage things in there with him, that his numbers, and just Ottawa hasn't been good for so long, that yeah, I think his stock is really low, and I think he's going to be a really solid role player. Maybe I don't know, maybe 30 to 35 seems a little bit high, but could maybe get in the mid 30s of points, score a couple goals, and just be solid defensively. So yeah, I like how he profiles in. I'm going to buy his stock.
All right. Yeah, I agree. What about, let's mention another, these last two offseason additions, Radek Faxa and Ryan Suter. Are you going to buy on either of them?
Not Suter. Yeah, probably not either of them. I think I would probably have to sell both of them. I think Faxa is kind of like the less exciting version of Joseph, honestly. Probably better at center, but I just don't know how much he is going to contribute, especially offensively. Faxa should probably be playing as the 4C, and I guess in that role, he's probably okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm still higher on him than probably most fans are, because I think he could still play a role, but I'm really not excited about him. And then, yeah, Suter is the slowest player in the NHL. I hope and kind of think that he's not going to hit his playing time bonuses. I think the first one comes in at 40 games played.
Okay.
I don't know if he'll get 40 games, honestly.
Interesting.
So
Is he like actually like this the slowest player, or is that just like
It's like kind of both. It's hard to actually like nail down
okay?
because
Yeah, yeah,
are you talking about top speed? Are you talking about average speed? But
yeah, yeah. That's true.
he's skates through butter.
Yeah, for like a team that really it seems like tried to address speed this offseason, they sure did sign Ryan Suter. So I think
Yeah.
I agree. Like not expecting a whole lot from either of these players. I think I will also be selling on both of them. Um, and then what about P.O. Joseph real quick? I think he's someone that like it's tough to know what to make of him. I'm selling based on the fact that I just don't think there's room for him at the NHL. Like I feel like he can have a solid season maybe in uh, uh, on the AHL team, but uh, I just am not really buying into the idea that he's going to be a productive player for the Blues this season.
Yeah, I am also selling on P.O. Joseph. I'm pretty low on him, I think.
Hmm.
I honestly, from what I've seen, I think he's just kind of an NHL bust at this point. And
Hmm.
it was cute that they signed both the Joseph brothers, and I'm happy for them that they get to dress up together because that's nice. But yeah, I don't know that he will get another contract after this one.
Hmm.
And I hope he proves me wrong, but I'm
Yeah.
probably of the offseason additions, I think he's the lowest actually, even
Hmm.
below like Ryan Suter or Radek Faxa to me.
Yeah. I think that sort of brings us well to our sort of like the young players. Let's talk about some of them, starting with the young players that we expect to sort of be playing at the NHL level. Let's start with Joel Hofer. He's someone that I really like, and I think is an excellent backup goalie. And I think uh, having him makes the Blues goalie tandem elite. But he's someone that I'm still going to be selling on based on the fact that I don't think he will repeat the season he had last year. You mentioned it when we talked about Jordan Bennington. Goalie performance is so hard to predict. And I think that you also mentioned sophomore slump is a real thing. And I don't know. Like, I don't, I think he'll have a good season. I think that he'll be a productive goalie for the Blues, like beyond next season. But I just don't see him repeating the great season that he had last season. And so, um, for that reason, I will be selling. What about you?
Yeah, he finished 11th in Calder voting last year. I didn't catch that. Um, I think I'm gonna buy on Hofer. And I get what you're saying, and I don't totally disagree. The thing for Hofer about Hofer with me is that when I watch him, his technique seems really good. He seems less prone to those like blow up starts that Bennington used to have quite a few of, and other goalies. It's mostly just he can get beat by better players, which is why he's a backup. But
Mhm.
I've mentioned I think the defense of this team is going to be pretty good. And I liked how Hofer played. I mean, obviously those results are phenomenal, but I actually do think he could repeat. I'm not saying that he probably will repeat, but I think there's I don't know. I'll throw a number on it, maybe 30-40% chance that he repeats. I'm not sure if I see him taking a step up. That would be pretty shocking if I'm being honest. But I like Hofer, so I'm going to buy his stock.
All right. Um, let's talk now about Zachary Bolduc, who is someone that's like he had a pretty solid performance at this year's prospect showcase. It was like pretty clear that he belongs sort of in the NHL now. I think really was sort of outplaying a lot of the prospects in like on Chicago and Minnesota. I think he's someone that you and I are both kind of high on, I believe, like in terms of having a solid season. So I'm going to be buying on Bolduc. He's someone that I think could. Let's see. Like last season, he had 25 games played, 5 goals and 4 assists in those 25 games. So I think given a full season, maybe on like the I don't know, what are we thinking? Like third or fourth line, something like that. I
Yeah.
think if he sees some more regular playing time, he's someone that I definitely see, cracking 10 goals. Someone that I think could crack 15 goals and would be a really solid forward for the Blues. And so I'm going to be buying on Bolduc. What about you?
Yeah, I actually of like the young, rookies or prospects or recent rookies, however you want to think about it. Bolduc's probably actually my number one for this season in terms of
Yeah.
who I think could has the chance to be the best.
Hmm.
And I mentioned, Brandon Saad was like one of the probably two or three depth forwards I trust the most. I think Bolduc is actually another guy on that list that I'm really excited to watch play because yeah, I think last year he showed that he has the metal. He just has to, get more of an opportunity and see what he can do with it. But he's really looked good in the off season here, and I think he could have a really nice role, as you said, a bottom six forward and with real scoring potential. So I'm really high on Bolduc. Actually, I'm definitely buying his stock, and I think he could kind of have a bit of a mini breakout here.
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily. I don't know if he'll get to like 50 points. That might be the ceiling. But I think, yeah, I think 15 goals is totally achievable, and I think he could get. I don't know. I think 35 points would be a good benchmark for a great season by Zach Bolduc.
I can't remember what episode it was, but I think I remember you in the past mentioning that you see him as someone as a candidate to get 20 plus goals. Do you still think that's a realistic, a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. I think it's in terms of the range of outcomes, at least 70th percentile, maybe beyond that. In terms of it's unlikely, like it
Yeah.
70% of the time that doesn't happen.
Right.
But I do think it's possible this season. Yeah, and I'm really high on Bull Duke, so I'm definitely buying his stock.
Yeah. So the sort of like the last young NHL level guy that we'll talk about before we shift to some prospects is Matthew Kessel, and this is an interesting one that I want to hear your thoughts on first.
Kessel, the only thing for me, I really like Kessel, and I really like how he could fit into this team.
Hmm.
The only issue, so I would be buying his stock. The only issue is playing time
Hmm.
that I just don't know if he'll get the opportunity to. But if he gets
Yeah.
the opportunity, which I think he should, because I think he is, as of right now, at least as good as P.O. Joseph, if not better. And I think he could beat out Ryan Suter.
Hmm.
So I am going to buy Kessel stock on the stipulation that he gets his chances, because that's not a given.
Yeah.
But when he does play, I really like, yeah, just how he fits into this team, and I really like his ability as a third pair defenseman. So I'm gonna conditionally buy his stock.
Yeah, I think he's like in that sort of 5, 6, 7 range, like in terms of like ranking the defensemen. I think he's like down there with Suter. Like maybe you put I don't know, like I guess Perunovic down there. But I think he's someone that I will also be like a cautious buy on because I'd agree. I think if he sort of establishes himself as one of the regular players and like get some solid playing time, I think he can really take a step forward on his performance last season, which in 39 games had 1 goal and 6 assists. I think that's totally beatable, and I think I will also do a sort of a cautious ish buy, like yeah, a conditional buy, like you said. So let's talk now about some prospects here. Starting with Zach Dean, who may or may not be considered like a prospect. I think he's still a prospect, but do you want to go first? I know you love the prospects, so why don't you go first on Zach Dean?
I don't know what it is, but I just kind of have never seen it with Zach Dean.
Hmm.
I think he could be an okay player in his NHL career at some point. I just feel like he's very slow to learn the level of play that he's at.
Hmm.
And so especially for next season, I don't know how he'll slot in. I know he's looked really, really good in the prospect game and in the
Yeah.
preseason, but I still am not there with Zach Dean, and I don't know, maybe I just am a Zach Dean hater. But I think there's a little bit more work to be done with him. I don't think he has a high floor. So for that reason, I think his ceiling is decently high in terms of like the role that he's expected to play. I'm not saying that he's going to be, what Jake Neighbors was last year or anything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think there's I think, as I said, his floor is pretty low. So for that reason, I think I'm going to sell on Zach Dean.
Yeah, I think he had a really solid, prospect showcase. I'd agree there. Like he played alongside Bolduc and Kaskamaki, and I think he played really well. That was like a pretty solid line. But I also just don't like. I don't know that there's room for him, and I don't know that there's room for him to play well this upcoming season. So I think I'll also be selling on Zach Dean. And again, these are like every single player that we're selling on. We hope they prove us wrong, obviously.
Of
But
course.
he's not someone that I see really taking a step forward yet. And I think he could maybe get there as long as he it'll take a little more development, I think. But for now, I think I will be selling. Um, Next, let's talk about one of the big names in the Blues prospect world, especially recently, Adam Jiricek. He was their first round draft pick this year. It's tough to know like where people stand with him. It seems like a lot of people are really high on Adam Jiricek. Like one person that comes to mind is Corey Pronman at the Athletic had Jiricek ranked as like the number one prospect in the Blues system. I'm not so sure about that. Like it seems like
Yeah.
some people are really high on him, but it also seems like some people are maybe a little too low on him. So like it's kind of a mixed bag with Jiricek. He's someone that I am going to buy on. I think that like uh, obviously he has that injury that he's trying to return from, and that sort of limited his capabilities in his sort of draft year playing wise. But the year before was really solid. I think has some real potential to be a solid sort of offensive defenseman. And I don't think he'll be having an impact on at the NHL level. Like definitely not. But like I think well, we'll just have to we'll have to check in. Maybe we'll have to check in with Sam halfway through the season. Which, by the way, check out our last episode. We had Sam at STL Analytics on Twitter or X. We had him on to talk about Blues prospects, and that was a lot of fun. But I think Jiricek is someone that I'll be buying on in terms of like successfully making it back from his injury and sort of showing some more growth and solid performance. But what about you?
So I think, I mean, I know I've put my claim out there as sort of lower on Jiricek than probably consensus. But I do think that there is a avenue for him to have a good season next year. I believe he's expected to play in the OHL instead of in the Czech hockey league.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because of that, he will get more of an opportunity to not play against grown men and like figure out his game more.
Yeah.
I'm going back and forth in it. I think I'm still going to sell Jiricek stock because I think it'll take him time to get used to playing from being fully healed because he played most, if not all, of last season injured. So he'll have to find his legs again, and which are like kind of so important to his game, and also just like finding a new team, new league where the play style of the league probably complements his skills better, but
Mm-hmm.
also he still has to find out how to um, hold up against younger, faster players. So I think next year isn't the year to judge Jiricek, which is so tough because you get a first round pick, you want to see returns immediately.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to sell on him for next season, but I think going forward is where I could maybe reevaluate and yeah.
He's definitely a tough one. We'll have to revisit him with we'll have to get Sam back on and revisit some of these prospects sort of mid-season maybe. Let's talk about sort of like the two big names in the Blues prospect universe in Jimmy Snuggerud and Dalibor Dvorsky. Let's start with Snuggerud. Going off of sort of your bold predictions, I can kind of guess what your take is going to be on Snuggerud, but why don't you go ahead and tell me?
Yeah, I mean Snugger is just so good. He looks like a honestly, the thing about Snugger is he just looks like a maybe not a finished product, but he looks NHL ready. Like he looks like a player that would be competent and not necessarily have as many like rookie struggles Probably because he spent so much time playing in the NCAA. But yeah, it's hard to say if I'm buying because I think a lot of people are really high on Snuggerud. I guess I'm very slightly buying, just because I think his stock is already really high. But he's so good, and I think that he will play in the NHL this year. There is a genuine question about how much because he did announce he was going to stay at Minnesota. Could be the case. Could be that he stays for the entire season, but I don't think that's a given. Um, so I don't know how much playing time he's going to see, but I think he's going to look really good when he gets here. I just think he just looks NHL ready, and that usually is a pretty good sign for younger players.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm keeping you honest here. Don't forget, Alec predicted that Snuggerud will play 40 games with the Blues and he'll score 18,
Boldly,
18 plus
boldly
goal.
predicted.
Boldly predicted. Check out our bold predictions episode for his full take there. But boldly predicted 40 games played. So that would be awesome. But I'd agree that like he does seem like he's ready to play at the NHL level, and I think I will also buy. I think that he'll have like a really solid year NCAA, and um, if and when he does make it onto the the Blues team, I think he'll perform really well. So I will be buying on Snuggerud. What about Dvorsky? This is I feel like people are really excited about Dvorsky. Some people are like a little bit more cautious. Like last season when he was he was playing in the Swedish hockey league, right at the beginning of the season, and sort of looked a little outmatched by the sort of the grown men playing in that league. But once he moved over to the OHL, really dominated. So it's like I think he will like I can buy on the fact that he'll have another good OHL season, but like am I buying on the fact that he'll make it to the NHL and be a productive player? I'm not so sure. He's someone I might have to hold on in terms of, in terms of those two questions. Like I'm buying on the fact that he will be good in the OHL, but I'm holding maybe on the fact that he would be productive in St. Louis. But what do you think?
I mean, you said I think dominated is the right word because
Yeah.
oh my goodness, 45 goals, 43 assists for 88 points in 52 games. He was almost a goal per game
Yeah.
and had the assist to. So yeah, that's a woof. That's pretty crazy. But I actually also think I might. Well, I guess you held.
Hmm.
I think I
Hmm.
might sell a little bit on Dvorsky. I think the perception of him is that he's gonna come in and just be a 2C and be really good, and he's
Yeah.
gonna play, 30 to 40 games in the NHL. And I don't know that that's in the outcome for him this year, and I actually don't know that it's a given that he's going to play in the NHL this year. I think it kind of is going to depend on how the season's going for the Blues. But if we're in a playoff race, like I think a lot of us hope we are, um, then I think that probably he's not going to get the chance to play. I think you'll only call him up if it's sort of the season is over at that point. At least that's how I feel about it. And so, yeah, I don't know that there's a route for him to get a ton of playing time. And
Right.
I think he's still just a little small and young. And I don't know. I know I've said this before on the podcast. I wouldn't play him this year, and people are really high on him. And believe me, as a prospect, I am so high on Dvorsky, but
Yeah.
I just don't think this is the season for it. I think
Yeah.
it's one more year before we really start to see Dvorsky um, really make an impact.
Yeah, that's the important distinction here. Like we're not selling on him as a prospect. We're selling on him for or selling or holding or whatever for next season because I think that the like the solid NHL level play will come. I just don't think it's quite yet. So I think he needs, as you said, needs to grow a little bit. So that'll do it for like players. Let's talk now about whether we're buying or selling on some other figures in the Blues universe. The Blues extended cinematic universe with Drew Bannister. So obviously, one of the sort of early news pieces from the Blues offseason was that they have signed Drew Bannister to a contract to be like the head coach, removing the interim tag from his title. So he'll be the head coach of the Blues for the next 2 seasons. Blues got off to a rocky start under Craig Berube, but it seemed like they sort of started to right the ship under Drew Bannister. I can't remember the exact number, but I think under Drew Bannister they played at like 102-point pace. I think that's the right number, somewhere around there at least. And you know, I think it's tough. Like it's tough to know what to make of the coach. I think I'm gonna be buying on Drew Bannister. I think at this juncture for the Blues, there's like a lot of like shuffling in of young players. Like you see Jake Neighbors carving out like a role. Dylan Holloway will hopefully do the same. And Philip Broberg, Matthew Kessel, like all these young guys are sort of establishing, or at least trying to establish, a role for themselves. And he's someone that works really well with young players. Also, you look at someone like Jordan Kyrou, who sort of turned his season around once Drew Bannister took over. So I think I really liked what I saw from Drew Bannister last year in the way that he was able to like address some of the glaring issues for the Blues. Like that gives me some confidence in him as a head coach. I'm not saying he's going to be like one of the top coaches in the league, but I think I'm buying on someone who might not have like super high stock, just because people aren't super familiar with him as a head coach. But I'm feeling pretty optimistic about Bannister, so I'm going to be buying. What about you?
I think I also, and maybe this is just the Blues fans in this, but I also
Yeah.
kind of like how Bannister has things laid out for him coming
Mm-hmm.
into this season. He's built a rapport with a lot of the AHL players, and we're
Mm-hmm.
starting to see a lot of those guys, Bolduc, Kessel, etc., really start to get like significant playing time, and not just like
Yeah.
a dip of the toe in the water anymore. Like they're actually starting to submerge and fully go for the swim. And I think Bannister's ready to take that step alongside with them. I don't. It's hard to say. I mean, in my predictions, I didn't have the Blues making the playoffs, and so if they get 102 points and don't make the playoffs, I don't know that has ever happened, because that would be insane. But yeah, I don't know if they'll play on a 102 point or end up getting 102 points. Although I think that's like possible. I think that's very much within the realm of possibility. And for me to be saying that for a head coach who hasn't had a whole season in the NHL, it's hard for me not to say bye after following that line of logic. So I like Bannister, and I'm excited for. I think he could have a really, really nice season here.
Yeah, I just found the number. It was 102-point pace, and like obviously, yeah, like you said, I'm not sure we can expect anything like that. I did predict them to have 98
Maybe.
points, but it's it would require some pretty like high level play, and sort of like high percentage outcomes for a lot of players. But yeah, I'm optimistic about him. What about Doug Armstrong? He's someone that I feel like his stock has risen this summer specifically, where like maybe it was a little bit lower. Or trending down in the like in seasons prior, but had sort of a crafty off season, especially with that offer sheets move. But are you buying or selling on Dougie Dollars, Dougie Dimes?
I mean, I've always been a Dougie Dimes defender, whether for better or for worse.
Wish we had a
Truly,
button.
yeah, we need our holding. I don't know, holding Dougie's dimes. Whatever. But that's a reference to our partner at Deal in the Cards, which if you're a Cardinals fan and you haven't found them, somehow you're here, go check them out. They do good stuff over there. But anyways, so yeah, I've always been an Armstrong defender, so this is probably not a surprise that I'm going to say he's buying, but I have actual analysis to make on it, other than he's been good and is still good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he set himself up really well. I think the Blues were in a really tricky cap situation, and he's kind of navigated that like perfectly, while
Yeah.
still having Broberg and Holloway signed for more than just this year, meaning that next year that money is set and they don't have to worry about that. He's got some money coming off the books, and he'll have less questions to answer this offseason. I think still, the Torrey Krug question will be around. I'm assuming that Colton Parayko will still be on the team, and I'm assuming that he will remain on the team. I don't think that question, I think that's been firmly like, the Blues are going to listen to every offer, but I don't think Colton Parayko is going anywhere. Overall, it just feels like there's a lot more, set on the team. And, Bennington's gotten his money. Joel Hofer is going to get probably a smaller extension here, but he'll have some space to work to make one or two moves. And he's been trying. And so I think he's set himself up really well to continue building his legacy at this point.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And what I really appreciate about Doug Armstrong specifically, like as this offseason has progressed and developed, is like I think he has a really realistic view about the Blues team and where they currently are. Like he's not got his whatever blue tinted glasses on and saying like we feel good about this team to make the playoffs and make some noise or that kind of canned response that you hear from like GMs of teams a lot. I think what I've heard from him is more like I'm hoping that they prove that to us, like and he's saying they need to prove it. Like he's it's and he hasn't said this explicitly, but it sort of sounds like they're not expecting them to make the playoffs. They're not expecting them to make a run or anything like that. But he's said that he's talked to the leadership group, the player leadership group, and told them like it is your job to prove us wrong, to show us that this team is ready, and ready for us to add to it and improve it. And so I really appreciate that he's confident and is like pushing them to do that, while also being realistic about maybe they're not quite there yet, which is sort of like the philosophy that it seems like he's taking. Also being like realistic about the future of the Blues, laying out that succession plan with Alexander Steen before it's before it's too late to do something like that. And really, I don't know, just like improving the team for this upcoming season, as we've mentioned, and improving them for the long term as well, while not like breaking the bank or trading away all the prospects or anything like that. Like I think he's sort of navigated this retool and this off season and the Blues as they currently are constructed in like a really intelligent way. And I think that I will be buying my stock in Doug Armstrong to, as you said, he set himself up to have a productive season as a GM, and I think he can do that for sure. Any other names? Like one name we didn't talk about is Texier. Do you want to talk about, I don't know, Louis, the Blues mascot? Any names you want to mention before we quickly talk about some preseason stuff?
I mean, shout out to this touched my heart a little bit. The new anthem singer will be Prashard Owens. Congratulations to him. And Charles Glenn is just such a, I don't know, pillar of my childhood. And so there was a nice video that they put out on their social medias. But yeah, I think I'm good to talk preseason a little bit.
I'm pushing all my chips in, buying Louis stock. I think he's going to have an elite season as a mascot. Okay, let's talk about the Blues' first preseason game against the Dallas Stars. As we're recording, it's Sunday, September 22nd. So they played this game last night, and it's the only preseason game they've played so far. But they'll be playing against Utah in a couple hours. So obviously they did lose to the Stars. It was 2-1 Stars, which is a little disappointing. But it is preseason, so it's not too much of a hit. Kasperi Kapanen scored the Blues' lone goal, which was assisted by Zach Dean. Anything you want to highlight that really stood out to you from this first preseason game from the Blues?
I think I really liked. There's a couple things. Bennington looked like so good. I said this pre-show, but it's like he was like try-harding so much in his first hockey action back that maybe don't get yourself injured or whatever. But yeah, but Bennington looks unbelievable. I think he's gonna have a huge season. And I also really like Zach Bolduc in this game. I think he looked really strong, throwing hits around and offensively creating. So yeah, just to echo what I said earlier, I really like how those two, look going into the season.
Yeah, I agree on the Bolduc point, especially like 3 shots on goal was was a solid number for him. And obviously Bennington, he just played the first period, right, and held them
Yeah,
scoreless. So he got it done. I do want to say, like, Colton Ellis, he was the goalie that came in to take over um, the other two periods for the Blues. He did give up both goals to the Stars. He made 14 saves, and while he did give up those two goals, I think he had a like an encouraging outing, a productive
I'd agree.
game. You can't expect a lot, I feel like, from someone like Colton Ellis in this position, but I feel like the Stars like best performance came against him. Like I think he was facing a lot of competitive shots, like especially like when the defense sort of let something through, and I think he did pretty well, like all things considered. So just wanted to
Yeah,
mention that.
I'd agree.
Um, do you think that this outcome, the 2-1 outcome, do you think it says more about the Stars being good that they won? Do you think it says more about the Blues being bad that they lost? What's your thought on sort of what indications we can take from this outcome?
Um, I do think that the Stars players looked really good. I
Yeah.
think I think there's a little bit more to be said about their level of play than just like the Blues were bad, because I don't think that's the case. I think their starters were really scary. I think Johnson and Stankoven are kind of nuts. Like they look probably like top 50 players, which is just crazy. Um, that might be a little high, but I don't know, man. They to me they pop off the tape every time.
Yeah.
And even I guess the more exciting thing was seeing plays from, which I guess is just preseason, from players you hadn't heard about,
Hmm.
made more of an impact than maybe the Blues starters. So,
Hmm.
but I would say that probably I learned more, I think, about the Stars organization and their team than how I changed my thoughts on the Blues.
Yeah. Didn't Logan Stankoven have like 9 shots, or like 9 shots or something, like
Yeah.
something crazy like that? He was, yeah. They do look good for sure. One thing that is concerning is the sort of the face off percentage between the two teams. Like the Stars won like 2/3 of the face offs in this game, and so it is a preseason game, and the Blues weren't rolling out their best lineup, obviously, but it seems like that's sort of been a trend for the Blues, is a poor face-off percentage. And I don't know, like, do you think that's concerning, or any indication of what might be in store for the regular season?
I do think that there's a chance. I think that faceoffs have been kind of a weakness of this team for some time now. Um, yeah, I think losing guys like O'Reilly and even
Yeah.
like Prime Shen, or you could say a lot, but yeah, I think faceoffs have been a struggle for this Blues team, and I don't see it getting better. I could actually see it getting worse. Thomas is okay faceoff wise, but I wouldn't say he's like a dominant faceoff winner.
Hmm.
And then I really don't know that any of our other guys I'm really that excited about. So I do actually think that that is kind of could end up being a weakness to focus on throughout the year.
For sure. Definitely tough, to know what to take away from just one game. So we're definitely going to continue to cover the preseason games. Hopefully, notice some positive trends, and we'll talk about maybe some negative trends as well. But that will continue tonight against Utah, and then I think the next preseason game is on Wednesday. So we'll continue to talk preseason games as they come. Before we wrap up here, we're going to talk about the final game of the Blues Prospect Showcase against the Minnesota Wild. But before we get there, if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That subscriber count has been going up a lot lately, which we really appreciate. So if you haven't already, we'd really like for you to do that. Rate the podcast wherever you're listening. Give us a follow on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, so you can follow along with us there. And then if you like Note News and think a friend or family member would like us too, then just get the word out. We really appreciate all that. So, anyways, let's talk Blues Prospect Showcase. This was a pretty impressive game from the Blues Prospects. They beat the Minnesota Wild 6-2. Um, Alec, what did you like from this last game of the Prospect Showcase for the Blues?
It really was kind of a beatdown, and I think some of it was the Wild's goaltending situation
Hmm.
looked probably worse than like I think a lot, at least some of the scoring came mostly just from poor goaltending. So
Hmm.
that's exciting because the Wild don't have a super sound um, goaltending tandem right now.
Hmm.
Although they do have a really exciting goaltending prospect, but you never know with goalies. So I don't know. Maybe that could be a weakness for them going forward. But anyways, yeah. Um, I mean, just looking at the stat sheet, I think Pikarchik really showed out. He's someone, if you check out our prospect episode with Sam, we talked about it, but he really likes Pikarchik. And I kind of didn't until this game. I start to see it. I still don't know if I'm that high on him, but he had a really great game. And then I think mostly just this really highlighted the depth of our system and
Hmm.
how exciting a number of these players could be. I don't, none of them might ever get to that, um, I don't know, top 50 player level, but I still think that they're, although I don't know, I'm really high on Dvorsky. Anyways, for the most part, a lot of the guys that we're excited about are really good role players, and they kind of showed out and showed why.
Hmm.
Um, Also, I guess very small sample sizes, but we're getting a lot of offensive contributions from our defensive prospects.
Hmm.
I don't know. That would be nice
Yeah,
to see that continue. I don't know if it will, but yeah.
for sure. Like we mentioned when we talked about Bolduc earlier, he really just like just like it was pretty clear that he doesn't really need to be playing against prospects anymore. He was very obviously like a step above, and so I think that's encouraging for sure. Dvorsky had I think 3 assists in that game, which was really cool to see him bounce back after sort of like maybe I guess an underwhelming first game of the Prospect Showcase. So that was cool. And then Will Cranley, the goalie for the Blues in this game, had 26 saves on 28 shots, and so had a really solid game. I think he played last year's in last year's Prospect Showcase as well, and didn't do so well, and so did a lot better this year. And yeah, so I think that's encouraging for sure. Real quick, one thing I did want to mention that I forgot to about the preseason game versus the Dallas Stars, which was encouraging, is that the Blues penalty kill was 5 for 5. So
Hmm.
whatever that's worth for a team whose penalty kill was maybe not so great last year, I think that's at least a little bit encouraging. Anything you want to add on that first preseason game or that last game of the Blues Prospect Showcase?
Um, just I'm so excited for Dvorsky. Again, I think it's probably going to take a little bit more, but
Right,
he's so good. He's
he is so good.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm really hoping for like 2025, 26. Like that would be so cool to see him carve out a role. I'm excited for him too. It's just like he's just crafty. Like I don't know, man. I like him.
Hmm.
I like him for sure. So we ran a little long, but there's a lot to talk about as hockey is getting started here. So you can expect more coverage on our part as we ramp up to the season and then into the season as well. So we'd really appreciate it if you would follow along for all that. You know where to reach us. I mentioned it a couple times already. So really appreciate you watching and listening all the way to the end. And we'll see you next time on Note News. And as always, let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.